Yo, what is up, my Nakama? My name is Daniel, and this upcoming Monday, I'll be starting with my OBGYN clerkships and resuming my third year of medical school. So recently on YouTube, I've been seeing a lot of videos about quitting medical school, taking leaves of absences, physicians dropping their jobs. And so I wanted to address this sensitive topic because it is pretty personal for me, because I did take a leave of absence during my third year, and I feel like I want to address this topic for those of you that are thinking about this question. I think that almost every medical student during their 4 years of medical school will either jokingly or seriously consider this topic. Now, there are so many factors as to why this is the case. For me personally, it's not that the studying is very complex or hard, but for me it really boiled down to a time thing. So during my preclinical years, I felt like I had a really good study routine and a good work-life balance because all we had to do was study. We didn't really have to go into the hospital and do our clinical rotations. But once third year started, in addition to basically having a full-time job, we also had to come home and study, and that was time that was taken away from my personal life, which was kind of hard to manage. And somehow it's become pretty standardized, even during your rotations, and then as a resident, to work 6 to 12 days in a row, 6 to 6 p.m. shifts, and then study afterwards, and that is just really tough. Now, I know some rotations are different and more manageable, but I think pretty much consistently you're working at least 60 to 80 hours a week during your third year. One of my attendings had a really good analogy for what third year is like, and he said that third year is basically a baptism by fire. Now, clinical hours and how medical school can be structured is a subject for a whole other video, but in this video I really want to focus on students who are seriously contemplating leaving medicine, and I want to offer my thought process before committing to such an important decision. And basically I want to structure this video into 4 main steps that I think you should think about and undergo before actually making the decision to completely leave medicine. Because I've been in your shoes if you're thinking about it, and I want to offer you some advice. So step 1 is kind of addressing the underlying issue, which is, why do you feel like you want to quit? And why are you feeling burned out? Now, this is actually a pretty hard question to answer for some people, including myself, because I've never really gone through an exercise of like exploring my own thoughts and my own mental health. But for me, it was basically med school was taking away time from things I consider extremely important, like hanging out with my wife, my creative videography work, exercise. I could manage all of these during my preclinical years, but once clinicals hit, it was way harder to manage. So because of all this, I felt like I was becoming more jaded as third year continued, not just to the residents I was working with and to my peers, but also to some of my patients. Now, I don't think it really, inhibited my patient care, caused me to make any mistakes, but I just wasn't as emotionally invested with my patients as I usually am. And those of you that know me or have been following the channel, you know that I'm almost always extremely positive. I have that Dattebayo mentality. But when that mentality started to fade, I recognized that something was kind of wrong and that I needed to take a step back. So once you've kind of gone through this process of identifying what's kind of the root cause of you feeling burned out or wanting to leave medicine, then I think the second best thing to do is to talk to your peers, talk to a counselor, basically to get some kind of outside opinions on your situation. Now, to be perfectly honest, this is actually a step I kind of skipped at the time because I knew that I had to, leave and take a step away from medicine. But looking back, I think that it would have been a really good idea to have a therapist or talk to a counselor beforehand, or even to talk with our school administration to kind of voice my thoughts and frustrations. I think that by having these outside opinions, you can help that kind of guide you in your decision making. And the main reason for having outside opinions is to determine whether or not you actually should take a leave of absence to address your burnout. For example, if your burnout is not because of your hospital work, but maybe because of your studying, like you find it difficult to memorize material and you're having difficulty studying for your exams, then that can be something that can be addressed in that moment. If your school has resources with academic counseling, or maybe some of your peers are really good at studying and are willing to help you out and go through their study methods and stuff, then that can be something that can be fixed along the way. You don't necessarily have to quit medicine just to, improve your grades. This is why I think the first step is critical, because it really requires some reasonable amount of introspection to really determine why you're feeling burned out. Because if you find out, that it is all because of studying and that you just don't know how to study, and that happens to some people, even in their third year of medical school, it's always changing, your approach to studying and how efficient you are and stuff. So if that's the reason that you feel like you're stressed about medical school, then that can be something that can be addressed. And that's just something that you have to figure out for yourself. Now, in my case, with all the factors related to time and not having enough for my personal life, I felt like I had to put a pause on my medical school studies rather than continuing with my clerkships. Because the clerkships, it was pretty easy for me. Like, I think for a lot of medical students, we're coming from a background of studying really hard and memorizing a lot of information. And for the most part, we're all really good students already. So it's not like the material is difficult. It's just, the amount of duty hours and time that it takes to do everything in your third year. So now moving on to step 3, which is a step that I can't more highly recommend, is to put a pause on your studies rather than straight up quitting, which is what I did by taking a leave of absence. Now, I want to be completely transparent and say that at the time when I was in internal medicine, I was more thinking if medicine in general is the right career for me. My thoughts were pretty negative, and although I knew a leave would be better, I was really thinking, should I just quit this whole process? But I'm so glad I took a leave instead of just quitting, because during this time, I had the time to explore myself and to really find out if I still enjoy medicine and see it as the right career path for me. Okay, so step number 4 is for people who are on their leave. They haven't quit medicine yet, but they're, taking a break and a pause from their medical school studies. And if you made it to this point, then the very first thing that you have to do is just enjoy, relax, and breathe deeply during your time away from medicine, and just really recharge yourself mentally and physically. Now, whether your leave is just a few weeks, a month, or even a year, it's really important to take this time to consider if you still want to do medicine, and if you don't want to do medicine, what else can you do in place? Now, I think this is an interesting question because for a lot of medical students, I feel like they have no idea, they can't even fathom what else can they do, because their whole lives have revolved around studying and preparing to be a doctor, that sometimes they might feel like they lack other skills to be in another work environment, basically. But I'd argue that most medical students, well, one, they can definitely adapt if they quit medicine, because most of us are coming in with degrees of some sort, so we can always fall back on our degree that we had with our undergraduate studies. And then for me, for example, I've had a lot of creative pursuits and hobbies and passions that I came in with, like videography and photography. So those were options that I have and still have for leaning back on, if this whole medical thing just failed. Now, I do want to address the elephant in the room, which is basically your student loans and kind of this mentality of the sunk cost fallacy, meaning that you put in so much time, depending on when you quit or take a leave in medical school, that you feel like you have to complete medical school now because you've invested so much time and money into it, which is definitely a legitimate thought to have. But I think that at the end of the day, if you're really passionate about something else and have a strategic game plan in it, you're not just going in with nothing, but it's something that you've established and that you feel like you can fall back on, then, you only live once. So I feel like, it's okay to leave medicine in that scenario and have a good game plan of tackling your student loans. Because once you quit medical school, like if you actually quit, your student loans will automatically be resumed, meaning you have to make monthly payments. And there's different payment options that I'll get into in another video, but just know that you are going to have to start paying your student loans basically from the moment you stop. Now, I want to tell you how I felt and what my thought process was as I continued my leave of absence. So not only did I regain an appreciation for medicine and the work that physicians do, but I'm just generally excited to start with my clerkships again. I think no matter what I do in life, I would always want or have to do something involved with science and math because it's so ingrained in my being, and it's something that I've always enjoyed. That's why I majored in chemistry in university. And the one thing I missed about being involved in some sort of science and math every day is the patient interactions, because that's what makes a physician job so unique. It's, you're combining intelligence and creative thinking and science and evidence-based research with human interaction. And that's, I think, what makes the job of a physician so awesome, and that responsibility is very unique to that profession. And something that I was really able to clarify during my leave of absence is I was able to talk to so many residents and my classmates and attendings and physicians, and I realized that there's so many ways to practice medicine, once you graduate medical school. Like, third year is tough, training is tough. I do recognize that it's going to be a lot of hours put in. But, once you're an attending, there's so many ways you can structure how you practice and how you manage your work-life balance that it really is, up to you how you want to practice medicine. So that was really encouraging to hear from a lot of the people I talked to during my leave of absence. I think I was so caught up in the minutia of third year and studying and all of that I failed to understand kind of that being a physician and being attending is completely different than what it's like being in training. So taking the time off kind of allowed me to recognize that and understand that. So I'm glad that I did, because it makes me, want to actually pursue and finish my studies. So at the end of the day, to kind of wrap up this video, I think that if you've gone through all these steps and you've somehow created a strategic opportunity to leave medicine that will still enable you to be happy and follow your passions, then just go for it. But I think by taking a pause from your studies, you might surprise yourself in your newfound appreciation for medicine during your break. And really just the time that you can take to reflect and recharge is so important. And it's something that I'm going to try to do during my rotations and be more conscious of. Going into my rotations now, as I restart, I think I'm better able to recognize, signs of burnout. And I think I have a better sort of study method and approach to clerkships because I've already done it. So hopefully it goes well this time. I'm just actually excited to start and be back in the hospital and have more of a routine. And I'm excited to be returning to third year and share OBGYN and the rest of my third year with you all. For those of you who have stuck through the whole journey since day one, I appreciate you all so much. And I'll be releasing a lot more content in the future related to, my new study methods, related to finances, because I'm really passionate about that subject, and also just making cool, hype freaking videos, as I always love to do. So it's been a good break. I'm hyped to return and continue with my training. Stay strong and healthy, my Nakama, and as always, Dattebayo.